Hi, Mark here. We're going on with part two now of the expense classifier Excel VBA AI LLM demonstration video. Um, so what we're gonna do is last time we were feeding ChatGPT's responses into worksheet cells, and in this version um, we're going to feed its responses into a model, and you'll see that the models is like the heart and soul of the add-in. It's like the core, essence that enables you to accomplish things that ordinarily would not be possible. Um, it's easier to understand, I think, by seeing than doing. Um, so, well, I'm just going to show you. We're going to take the version from last time that we ended on, and we'll start with that as the basis in this version 2. The only change that I have made off scene is that I put in a new API key. Because now that you've seen how to make one and put it in, I don't think you need you don't need to know my key anymore, and I'm liable to forget otherwise. So let's open it up. Enable content. Let's make sure it works. Okay, see how the AI hacking menu that was there before is not present right now? It was right at the bottom of this list. That is because we forgot to call this subroutine in an event that runs. So their temporary equals true was set, means when we close the workbook, it goes away. If temporary is false, then it would just stay there always. But probably, definitely, we don't want that item to appear in just like every workbook. We only want it to appear in one of the host workbooks that we've made, specifically this one. So these 4 modules that start with host, these were injected when we created the host workbook. It was just part of the fixtures that were added. The add-in did that. And this one is called host events. So these run at different times. And there's a few other events too, but I think this is the most important one right here. So we're just going to call this function, and that will, whenever we click this reload button, deep recalculate, once the add-in finishes doing the stuff that it does, like reload the database tables and add your keyboard shortcuts, rebind the terminal commands, those are 2 things we did in part 1, it'll run that script. So we know it ran because our message box is still there. Recall that I was showing you how to throw message boxes, and I was showing you the 3 different colors. So let's get that out of there. Well, first let's verify that this is here. Good. And then let's get that out of there. So the message box was right here. VB critical for red, VB exclamation for a yellow, and VB information for like a friendly blue one. Just so you can see, I think that there's maybe a little bit of syntax confusion is easy to come up of, like, why do sometimes we have the call operator and sometimes not. If I do this, call message box, and just put this in parentheses, it's exactly the same thing. Some people don't like the call operator, but I do. There are certain places though, like for a message box, there's like, I don't know, 5 or 6 ones that by convention, I don't put the call operator. I just directly do message box. So let's get rid of this guy. We also forgot to turn on the smiley faces. So you see how there's not a smiley face right now? I've uncommented these lines. I'm going to run this again. And there's the smiley face. It should be noted that like all of these, recalculate, validate, test, reset, these are all just ways of running preset functions that you've created. So we're gonna hit all of these in this video. So let's make sure it works. Just hit enter on this. Use password 123. Don't get clever on this one. I'm not even sure if that'll make the final cut. Okay, we got our response. It works. Great. This is a good time to save. And I think we'll do. Let's change it to classifier model. We'll just go off this because it's the part 2 model-based one. Okay, let me consult my notes. So in this video, we are going to build 2 models using the add-in, prompt and one for business expense. And the prompt model is where we're going to store our prompts, like the base text that we've just been hard coding into a range right here. We're going to give it a proper model. And the business expense model is going to be the correspond to that CSV data file of business expenses. So we will learn how callback procedures work. We'll learn how to work with the database system and the object model API. That's really that's the heart and soul of everything. So I'll put that, we'll do that in just a few minutes. We'll learn how to build a user form from scratch. We're gonna notice that when we put our prompt model in there and we go to the generic edit view, that this does not fit in the standard input that's provided. So that's going to be our excuse to build a custom user form, which is going to be pretty cool and will expose you to a lot of things that you need to see. We'll build an import script to import the business expenses. We'll build a reset script, and we'll build some custom worksheet formulas. So those are formulas about the formulas like sum and the built-in formulas. We're going to make a custom one that reads data from our models. Unit testing and validation, and some serializing and deserializing of JSONs again. Okay, so this is a decent video snip. Let me start the next section. Okay. Let's start by looking at the models. So there are these models that come with the workbook. So sheet info, shelter, and testcat. These bottom 2 are grayed out, shelter and testcat, because there's no records that are in there. So we're going to create models that'll be just like these. The only difference is that these ones come with the system. At least for now they do. Sheet info, you've actually already seen. It lives, hitting Control-Shift-J. It shadows the worksheet. So every time you create or remove a worksheet, it catches up. And it's just kind of a quick way to group worksheets together. If you have certain sheets you want to hide or unhide as a group, or in my case, sometimes I just want to really quickly get to a worksheet. So I'll hit Control-Shift-J and type in testcat, and then we can go. It says the worksheet's currently very hidden. You might not know this, but Excel, you've got visible worksheets, hidden worksheets like normal hidden, and then there's super hidden is very hidden. So because you aren't really meant to be messing around with the worksheet tables, they're deeply hidden. So I'm just gonna click yes, and let's get this guy too. Okay. So the models, basically, you'll have an object in VBA where you can be like testcat.birthday, testcat.yearsold, and it will tell you the age of that cat or the name of the cat. And then you can also do things like testcat.name and equals some new name, and it will change it. So let's make that really clear. Models, we'll do this. So inject testcat mafia gang. All right, so these are just cats that I use when I'm testing out a new database function or something like that. I test drive it with these test cats. So if we look at, let's just play around for a second with with the cats. So I'm going to name this module AA demo. The AA is just so that it'll kick to the top of the list. As with all of the modules so far, I'm going to do the same pattern. Option private module, private messages string. Let's see here. Private sub demo test cat model. Okay. dim cat as class CLS test cat. That's all that prefix means. So when you create a model, which we're about to do in a second, it creates a class module for it and injects code. So like here's the test cat's code. Spaces. And here are all the fields, like is alive, birthday. See how these are they correspond. And when we create and remove fields, the add-in is going to come in here and remove and add the fields and keep it updated for us. So let's go back here. Let's just we'll just loop through the cats. No, first we need to get the database. DimDB as class DB. This is probably the object, like more than any other object. This is the one that you use all the time. And we're going to set that DB equal to get DB, control spacebar to see the different ways, I guess, you can get a DB. So the two main ones is like get DB or raise or get DB or nothing. They both do the same thing. Where they differ is what happens if the database that you're requesting, you're just going to give it the model name if it doesn't exist. So this one is going to just give you, here, let's just do it. WB as workbook, it's going to be this workbook. This is the host. The model name is testcat. Okay, so if we say message box db dot, here are all the methods that a DB has. You'll only need probably a handful of them. There's 5 cats in there right now. Okay, if I change this to get DB or raise, it's still going to work. But if the model doesn't exist, it's gonna raise. It's gonna get mad. It's gonna raise an error. That's what raise means. So actually, there's a lot of places where you'll see options of like get this or nothing, or get this or raise. There are certain cases where like if you want to raise an error, where it's like if things aren't as you expect them to be, you just want to stop the program in its tracks before it can go on lurching on potentially into a state where the data is corrupted. But everything it doesn't really matter which one we use in this context. So maybe I'll just switch around. So let's see. All right, let's loop through the cats. So we did a for each loop last time. I'm not sure if I really explained it well, but it's just, it reads like English. For each cat in db.get all records. Next cat. Most of it, like if I leave this next cat out, it's going to say like for without next. So it's going to tell you. You'll get feedback right away. Debug.print cat.name. Okay, keep your eyes over here. There we go. Those are the cats. What this really returned is a collection. So I could say cat collect as collection, set cat collect equal to db.getAllRecords, and then I could do it here. We'd get the exact same result. Just make a little separator there so we can see in between our runs. Okay, so if I want to, let's say we want to get Whiskers. Okay, Whiskers, his ID is 4. So here we can say set cat equal to db.getRecord by ID. Whiskers is 4. Message box, cat.name. His name is Whiskers. Okay. And now if I want to say cat.name, we know this cat is Whiskers. Let's just call it Whiskers actually. Dim Whiskers as test cat. And then let's say whiskers.name equals paws. All right, so watch right here. Let's run the script. Oh, I forgot to set Whiskers. It was still using the old like cat, that little loop variable that we had up here. Okay, let's try that again. Now Whiskers' name is Paul. So we changed the underlying, like the state of the data. And bear in mind, normally these sheets, you're not looking at them. We're only looking at these sheets now because I'm showing you how it works. We're looking under the hood. Okay, so the models are divided. If we go here and open this form, each model is divided into, every field has to be in one of two tables, either the remote table or a local table. All right, the difference between them is that remote data represents data that you do not control. So when we're importing our business expenses, all the fields except for 2 are going to be remote fields because they were ostensibly exported from some sort of accounting system or wherever they came from. But the point is they didn't originate here. They originated in a remote source. Local are the opposite. Now this is just test cat, so it's like I just sort of created a contrived model to test a lot of different things. Okay. Consult the notes. Let's create the prompt model. All right, so you've kind of seen, well, let's do one more thing. So Control-Shift-K is a shortcut to get to this fields form. The other way I did it is like through here, but because I needed to get to that form a lot, I gave it Control-Shift-K. That's the shelter model. We want to go to test cat. If we try to change a remote field, like let's say we try to change remote height, okay? So if I say whiskers.remote height equals, what is it now? He's 4. His remote height is 18. So let's try and make it equal to 23. We're going to get this this message box says remote height is a remote field and cannot be changed with VBA. Change the value in the external source and then resync, re-import. So that's a good thing though, because we want to enforce that the remote fields can't change. Okay. Now let's make the prompt model. Let's see. Okay. So home sheet. This home sheet was also just added when you create a new worksheet. It comes with a home sheet. The only thing really is that like whatever sheet is called home. So if I just change this to something else and I make another sheet called home, you know, and then I'm over here, Control-Shift-H will take me to the home sheet and this will take me home. But it's sort of a way to like anchor the application, is like this is the main landing page, staging page where you want people to sort of like drive the workflow of whatever it is you're doing for your users. We don't need this for a second. So let's create the prompt model. Horrible, get these grid lines out of here. Models. We don't need to see the test models really, or the system models, so I'm just going to get those out of view so they're not distracting. And I'm going to click Create Model. It's going to be called Prompt. Row limit, I'll set that at 25. That's just like how many records can be in there. it is not strictly enforced. So if it goes over the row limit, it's just gonna, I think it'll just give you a warning. But you should set it, I set it just as a way of like signaling intent of like, I expect there to be a maximum. You know, there's a big difference between a model that is only has a row limit of 10 that tells you something compared to one that has like 5,000. For the business expense model, we'll set the row limit higher. You can edit it at any time. You know, I can change it. So it's really not. Almost nothing is fixed. So you can change things later, and you should. You're working in a sandbox, the host workbook. So you should not be at all hesitant to like screw around and break things. It's a great way to learn. Okay, so the model ships with dummy local and dummy remote are the these two fields. It just needs a couple fields up there. So let's add the fields that we need. So let's add one field. Let's add the field name. All right, it's a local field. Basically, all of our prompt fields are going to be local, in fact. You can leave everything on variant field for now. That's fine to use. I'll set it to a care field, and it's just signaling the intention of like this is meant to be, you know, text. Some of the field types like that are enforced, so like date field, if you try to assign a value like cat.birthday equals, and you type in a string Statue of Liberty, you'll get an error and be like, Statue of Liberty is not a date. So there's some enforcement there. But we'll do care field. Notes, the name of the prompt. You don't have to fill those out. And null, this last one. This last one is important. It's not enforced right now. But what this means is that if you try to create a prompt, you know, you have to supply the fields of like the name, the other fields we add. If you don't provide a field and that field is marked as, you know, null allowed false, it'll say an error, be like, can't create a prompt without a name. As a general rule of thumb, you should aim to have null equals false wherever possible. You only set null equals true, you know, when you need to. That's just a principle of database design. And we can have a default, so maybe just for example purposes, I'll say default name. Meaning if no name is provided, when you create a new prompt, a new record will just get this name. Okay. Cool. For the other fields, we'll do it a different way. We'll just add them to the worksheet. I'll show you. It's a little bit faster maybe to do that. So we're going to need VBA callback name, base text, full example prompt, full example response, and a notes field. Paste our formats over. Make it a little bit readable. A little bit more readable. Okay. Save. I'm going to hit deep recalculate, and the first time it's not going to notice that anything's different. But the second time I press it, it's going to say you have 5 unapplied migrations. Press yes to apply them now. This is a Django term. So I've stayed really close to the way that Django, which is a Python framework for making websites, works. And part of the reason for doing that is so that if you learn how to use this add-in, you'll already be learning Django in stealth, like stealth learning. And it'll be quite easy for you to take a model that you've made here and put it into a Django project. And then essentially you can have your workbook talking to a website database that you and your team use. So if there's I think there's a lot of teams out there that like in the appraisal world where I come from, you can, let's these. You call rent comps. If you're valuing a apartment property, you're going to call nearby properties and survey them on what their rents are. And the goal is to get a picture of, like, for your target property that you're appraising, which in many cases is not built yet. Like, it's a proposed deal, and there's a construction lender, and he'll come to the appraiser and say, I need to know if the developer, if his pro forma rents are reasonable. Like, if I loan him the money to build this building, can he really get $2,500 for the 2-bedroom units? He's saying he can get that. So the appraiser goes and surveys nearby properties. I think that in a lot of small appraisal shops, they probably lose that data. They call the comps, and then they put it in their workbook, and then they move on. But what you can do is you can save those comps, and then the next time you're working in that market, you already have entries for comps in the market, and you can update them. And so, I don't know. I'm going to stop going down that thing. Okay, what's next? The next thing we need to do, so here you can see that the fields were created. We made them on the local worksheet, so they're local fields. Some of these should really be, like, this should be a text field. This should be a char field. To be clear, it would be fine if I just left them as variant. It would not matter at all for this purpose. Notes. This would be a text field. So the difference between a text field and a text field and a char field is that in theory, when you load a generic form, a text field is going to get this bigger box. It's meant for a small paragraph, whereas a char field is, like, very short, like name. But they're pretty much interchangeable. Yeah. Okay. And just to show you here a little bit, like, of how I'm trying to sort of hug to the. Damn it! Did I just show my API key again? Django model fields, char field. So I was hoping to see, like, a list of them. Django field definition, Django field types, char field, text field, Boolean field. Oh well. Oh, here we go. So char field, Boolean field. These names are taken. They're not. I didn't make them up. A few of them I did, but most of them I didn't. So never mind. Okay, I think I mentioned that these videos, like, I'm just not used to. I'm not used to talking into the camera like this. This is not coming naturally for me, but I'm gonna keep going through. Okay, so what we need to do now is we just made these that model. So first things first, let's make some constants. Model name prompt, and model name business expense. I already know. There's a saying, don't skate where the puck is, skate where the puck is going, like a hockey. I know where the puck is going. And so we're going to create this model soon. And so I'm just going to go ahead and put that, I'm going to go ahead and put a constant for that yet to be created model. This is New World Part 2, and this is the Old World Part 1. We're going to gut most of these out shortly. Okay? And then let's go to app common. And I'm going to make some helper functions right off the bat. Get DB prompt as class DB. So what we did over here, like this. Let's take this guy. And then this is going to be model name prompt. I could just put in this, like this. But the reason that you want to use the constant is that you have to imagine like what would happen if we had to rename the model. We're not going to have to, but the principle is that you want to set things up so that it's very easy to change. So we would change literally one constant, and everything else in this workbook code base is going to be reading from that constant. So it's a greater principle. And so we could do like this. And that. And let's play around with it for a second. So help create DB records testcat 3. We're just gonna say create DB records prompt. We'll make oh no, let's make 5 of them. Cool. So it just made 5 prompt records for us. So that'll just give us a little bit of a better basis here. Say get DB, it's class DB, get DB prompt, message box db.record count 5. So I was just kind of scratch testing this this function. Now, in reality, we don't need to create this DB variable at all. What we can do, you can see at the end, what we're doing is we're setting it's a function. So when we want to return, we just set the name of the function equal to what we want to return to. We can just take this right here, put it right there. And then this can go away, and this collapses. And then get DB, business expense, model name, business expense, because that's where the puck is going. Okay, so let's see. Let's go back over here, and instead of messing with the cats, let's mess with prompts. DB, get DB prompts. I'm going to say record instead of prompt. And that's class CLS prompt. So see, when we created the prompt model, it added the class module for us. Okay. Let's put in the base text for this one. So this was the old, instead of getting instead of just reading the range value to get the base text, we're going to get it from this, we're going to get it from the model. So I'm going to go here. For the base text, let's use this first one. Paste it in. Really big. Just kind of make it. It doesn't really matter. We're not really on this worksheet ever, so we don't need to see everything. And we're gonna need some names. So we're gonna need 2 prompts that we're actually going to use. One of them is the original one, so we're gonna give this a name, expense classifier selection, and this one can be expense classifier model. If I double click here, it's going to ask me to choose some fields to display. So every model you have like a generic list view where you can sort of specify what you want to see. Notes, sure. Okay, so here's the 5 records. You would normally just be looking in here. You would not be looking at this worksheet. Notice that the base text didn't appear. Why not? The answer is that when I just pasted the value in here, we went through the back door. So you're supposed to do it the way we did it with Whiskers, where you assign the value through here, like base text equals the base text. If I did it that way, it would appear. But we snuck it in the back door. if I hit deep recalculate, it's going to sync it up. But if we had gone in the front door, you wouldn't have to do that. Okay. Before we forget, let's go back to constants. And let's add a couple more. Try and do this. Do it a little bit. We'll cheat to go faster. Okay. And then I want one more function over here called get prompt by name. Get db prompt, get record by index. Prompt name string. All right, let's just zero in on this really quickly. What the index is. We're doing all of our setup stuff like right up front, rather than pinging back and forth. Okay, so right now the only way that we have to get one of these prompts is like we did with Whiskers, of like get record by ID. So we could just say get record by ID 1, and we know that that's this prompt. But we don't want to, as a general matter, we don't want to rely on things that are unreliable. And relying on this ID number staying the same is not a good idea. But we don't have any other way to get we don't have any other way right now to query. So the way that we're going to get around that is we're going to add what's called an index column. So first, let's just run it without the benefit of the index column. So set record equal to db get prompt by name, and let's say prompt name select message box type name record. All right, it's going to error query made by index on DB model which does not have any index defined. Okay, so let's add one. Models, edit the model, and we'll choose an index column. Not that one. This one. You might have seen that the sort columns. The sort columns is just so like you can make it so that they sort in whatever order you want your data to come in. Okay. So now I might need to do a recalculate. I'm not sure. Now we got a prompt. I really hate it when it does that. Okay. So we can make sure like VBA callback name. Let's say record.VBA callback name equals catnip. There it is. Okay. So if we go to now look like, let's just look at let's just dig all the way in here. If you double click on one of these records, it's going to say again for the edit view. So we have the list view and the edit view. Those are the two like generic views that can come with any model you create. So we'll select ID, name, VBA callback, base text, and notes. All right. So now VBA callback name, if I change it to dogs, and you watch this cell right here, we're going to get dogs. If we want to change the other record here and say, I don't know, whatever, a very big number. But I don't want that. Okay. Cool. Here's the issue though. Look at this is all messed up. So like, this is where even if I had this as a proper, if the add-in was respecting text fields, which it'll give you a little bit bigger of an input. It's not going to be big enough to accommodate this base text. The base text is huge. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to build a user form, which basically loads one of these models in, and like one row at a time, and lets us see the text, edit the text. And in doing that, we'll learn a lot about user forms and how these models work. We do need to get rid of these lower records. While you can sort of cheat through the back door and add in records like I just did, I put the base text in. For deleting stuff, you should go through the API. And when I say API, I just mean this DB system. So I'm going to say dim delete IDs as new collection, delete IDs dot add. We want to kill 3, 4, and 5. That's these guys right here. Let's call db.delete record rows, delete IDs. Gone. This is a good time to save. So save, and I do this F12. I mentioned that last time. It'll save your butt at some point. I just increment the version number. That way, if I do something like, say we did something like we accidentally deleted, a table worksheet or something. If all you're ever doing is hitting save, like you're going to save the badness too. So it helps to sort of like create a snapshot in time and just go increment a version number. All right, let's go back to the home sheet. Stop. All right, let's build out this home sheet a little bit as that sort of a base camp, if you will. I'll go down like 109 rows, whatever. We'll choose sort of a darkish color there. Don't do the whole column. I know you can select and go down the whole column, but every little thing adds up in terms of like the size of your workbook, and you just don't need to go down that far. Insert. So you'll see developer menu. If you don't see this developer menu, just click customize the ribbon here and check the developer box and press OK, and then it will appear. And other thing I never mentioned is like when I go to that code editor, I'm hitting Alt F11, and that's what's opening it up. There's a lot of ways though. If you right click on a worksheet, you can click View Code. Probably up here, there's a way, Visual Basic, that button. All right, so insert ActiveX control. Don't use the form controls, use this. These ones are stronger, a lot stronger. There's our command button. For command buttons on worksheets, I like to do, for font, I do size 14, and I use this Sego UI. That's like the new default Windows font, I think. It looks pretty good. Caption, Prompt Explorer. Okay? So this is the button that we'll use. It's going to load our form. Let's go ahead and make the form now. So you can right-click in any one of these things, insert, user form. Now you've seen them all. There's only 4 kinds of things here: class modules, standard modules, worksheets, and user form. We've got all 4 now. Let's make it really big because we need a big text box to accommodate the base text. And then let's go up here. A little toolbox. The toolbox, like sometimes it's there, sometimes it just goes away. I don't really know. But you can get it back the way I just did. All right, text box. Let's do one really big text box. This will be the base text box. The text box for base text. And then toolbox. Come back. No. Like I said, I'm going to keep it over here. No, I can't because I have to show you. All right, here's the label. So let's do a label here for, let's call this, let's call it base text. And that's really hard to see, so let's go font, Sego again, 11. That is more, that seems more visible. Okay, and then we're going to need some other text boxes. We're going to need one for each of the fields in our prompt model. So we're going to need one for name, one for VBA callback, and one for notes. We'll clean up and like align things better at the end. For now, this will be okay. Hold control. You can select multiple controls at one time. So I'm just holding the control key, and then you can change their attributes all at once. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to go Sego UI, size 11. I find that on the worksheet level, a size 14 is better for buttons, but in the user form, size 11 is like the sweet spot. Okay, so if I hit F5 right now, it'll load the form. All right, if I hit the escape key, notably, nothing happens right now with the escape key. The only way to get out of this thing is with the X. We'll fix that in just a second. The form needs a better caption in the upper corner, so let's just call it Prompt Explorer. Let's get some buttons on there. All right, so we're gonna need 3 buttons, a save button. This one's gonna be open in Notepad. And this one is gonna be exit. Okay, so all 3. The one exception that I have in terms of using Sego UI is for buttons. Don't ask me why. I still use 11-point size, but I think the default Tahoma looks better. Only in user forms. You probably rightfully have different tastes than me for your form styles, and you can make them however you want. Save. Open Notepad and exit. I make my exit buttons a little bit of like a darker shade. I think it doesn't really matter what you do as long as you try to be consistent. The save, we're gonna make this a light green. I guess normally in my own way, I usually use green for create and blue for edit. And in reality, this isn't gonna create one, it's gonna edit it, but I'm going with green. It's an example project. All right. This user form needs a better name, so let's call it Form Prompt Explorer. The name is the name like down here, which is distinct from the caption. The caption is like a loose display thing, but the name is at the top. For anything you see, worksheet, whatever, name is always going to be the top thing in this properties window. So let's give these buttons some names. Button save, BTN button, button open Notepad, and button exit. And let's get some more of these labels going on around here. So let's see, bring these guys down, space there, sure. Notes is going to be a little bit taller. Okay, and one more right here. This guy's going to be notes. This guy's going to be VBA callback. You'll see what a callback is in just a second. You actually already know what it is, believe it or not, but I'll have to show you. I'll have to prove it. You already know it. And this one is going to be name. Notice I don't give labels names, nor do I give command sheet buttons at the worksheet level. Like I didn't give this button a name. I could have named it like button open prompt explorer, but I didn't do that. They don't deserve it. All right, and lastly, this text box is going to be text name, text VBA callback name, and text notes. Note that I am making the names of these text boxes, I'm directly aligning them with the names of the, get out of here, test cats. Let's get rid of this guy too. With the names of the fields that we made. So name, VBA callback name, base text. Name, VBA callback name, base text, notes, the text prefix. Okay, now is a good time to save. Let's hook up the exit button. All right, what I just did is I double clicked on it. All right, so give me this form back. I double clicked on it like this, and it created this little function. So you see, this is all that's here now. But if I click on the, well, I don't know, let's just do this one. Button open notepad. You clicked the open notepad button. All right, F5 to run the form. There it is. So that's how you can just sort of string together these events. And the Excel user form, like, it's pretty rich in terms of, there's a lot of different events that are in there. Okay, so let me consult my notes. Okay, we're doing pretty good despite the fact that I haven't consulted the notes as much as I wanted to. The form opener. Okay, so we made this button here on the home sheet, but we didn't like do anything with it. So we could just do this, form, FRM underscore, I'll just hit control space. It knows there's only one keyword that matches, dot show. And that would work. But I never do that, and I think that it's pretty standard that people don't do it. I'm really not sure what exactly other people do, but I always make a specific opener function. So I'm going to go and I'm going to add another standard module. I'm going to name it app forms, and then I'm going to put in a function, public or subroutine, open form prompt explorer. Optional prompt name as string. So maybe the person that's opening the prompt explorer, maybe they don't care what prompt that it opens up on, or maybe they do. So this optional keyword is basically saying, like, it can be provided if you can call this subroutine and not provide it at all if you don't want to. Getting a little unstable there for a second. When you're working with user forms in VBA, it is important to save a lot, because sometimes it just, when you're changing things quickly, Excel will crash. It doesn't crash at runtime when you're actually using it, but when you're in design mode and you're like deleting buttons and moving controls around, at least when you go really fast, it sometimes does. So form prompt explorer dot show. Now our buttons, yeah, it's getting weird. Instead of doing it directly, we're just going to call this function. Okay, let's see here. Okay, you guys are not going to believe this, but I stopped recording. I stop, and then, you know, I go stand up for a second, and I come back, and then I came back, and I didn't hit start, and I built the form, and then I came to stop, and it was not recording. So I'm gonna have to build it again. Painful, but let's do it. So when I look back at the last segment that I just recorded, I said that instead of calling form open in here, that I make dedicated form openers. So we made app forms module, and we have this form prompt explorer.show, and there's a prompt name that's optional. I think that's about where it was. And over here, I just deleted all my code. We had a button exit and a little fake event on the notepad. So, let's build that form again, at least for me. So when the form loads, you notice how it's sort of like in this lower left corner instead of centered. Let's fix that. This is bad. This is really bad because I just noticed something else. One other thing. So in out of order, when the form was not, so the escape key, when I had just set this up, the escape key did nothing. So in order to make it so that the escape key closes the form, this is I think the only gap that I have here, is that I set this cancel equals true. So for one of your buttons, you can set cancel equals true. See how these are all false? And whichever button you have set for cancel equals true, say message box, the exit button is running. That code will run when you hit the escape key. So I just always have the same exact pattern with the forms. I have an exit button called button exit, and I set cancel equals true. Okay, so the form is not loading in the center. So we're going to rectify that. I just double clicked anywhere in the form, like down here, and it gives you like the default event is like user form click. So here are all the controls that we have added, like here are our text boxes and stuff, and the user form itself. You select a control there, and then these are all the events you can tap into for that control. So we're going to tap into the initialize event. In a little bit, maybe we'll also tap into the activate event. The difference is that the initialize event always runs. It runs the first time that the form is loaded. And then it does not run again. Whereas activate will run every time the form is displayed. So the nuance there is that you can hide a form without like unloading it. You can just, instead of saying unload me, you can say me.hide. I'm not going to go into that really. I usually just unload the forms. So the initialize event, let's do this. Call center user form on screen. And for the form, we're just going to pass me. We're on a user form, so me means the user form. If we were on a class module like test cat and we said me, it would mean the test cat. So like me.name on the test cat, the claw might come. But that's what me means. Okay, so we pop that code into initialize. Every form that I ever make has this code in there, and this is an add-in function that I made. It's just a little function. Now the form is centered. So we can now open the form. We can close it with the exit button. Let's get rid of that silly text in there. Let's go ahead and we'll tie it in. Like we need to pass in like the name of a prompt. So we'll pass in a prompt name. That way it loads the inputs, the values for whatever prompt, the name, VBA callback, that those are displayed, and that when we hit save that we can change them. So the downside of this initialize event, or I don't know if it's a downside, but it's just a reality, is that you cannot create arguments, parameters to pass in. So I always create public subroutine called real initialize. Okay, it's gonna take prompt name as string. It's not gonna be optional in this case. Up here, I'm gonna create a global variable, gv active prompt as class prompt. It's gonna be an instance of one of these prompt records. Okay, and then right here, I'm gonna say set gv active prompt. Right when the form loads, equal to get prompt underscore by name, prompt name. So recall we created this get prompt by name is just one of our little helper functions. It gets the prompt database, then it says get record by index, and then it gets it by the prompt name. All right. And then, let's see, let's go back home. So here's our command button, open form prompt explorer. We have an optional argument for prompt name, meaning if you want to open the form on a specific prompt, pass the prompt name. But if you don't care and you just want Prompt Explorer open, don't pass one and one will be provided, which we need to do right now. We're going to say right here, if prompt name equals blank, then prompt name equals prompt name expense classify select. So we got to have a warm pulse. And then what we got to do right here is form prompt explorer. We have to tell it the name of the prompt. So we'll call real initialize right before we show the form, when we'll pass in that prompt name. Okay? So, good time to save. Am I definitely recording? I'm definitely recording. Okay. At least I'm not going to hit all the snafus I hit like the first time. Like I forgot to pass in the prompt name and some other stuff. All right. So at this point there is a prompt up there, but we haven't done anything with it. So when you create a variable like inside of a function, like, I don't know, do we have any good examples? Yeah, like, no, that's not a good one. Here, when this function finishes, whatever the value of this variable, this string variable is, it disappears when the function ends. It lives and dies within the run of this function. But when we create variables up here at the module level outside of a function, they're going to persist. They will stay there until the form is unloaded. That's when they die. So basically, right when this form loads, we're going to set the active prompt, and that way it's there the whole time. Okay, so activate event. I'm going to just put a to do. Raise an error if gv active prompt is nothing. That would mean some caller somewhere did form prompt explorer.show directly instead of calling open form prompt explorer. That's not a real production comment. That was sort of for you. But the to do is real. Keep our initialize stuff at the top. Let's create a function here called private sub refresh display elements. And so right when real initialize, as soon as we set the active prompt, we're going to call refresh display elements. So because we've assigned this module variable, now refresh display elements is going to be it's going to have access to it. So me.text base text dot value equals gv active prompt dot name. Me.text name dot value gv active prompt dot name. Me.text notes dot value equals gv active prompt dot notes. Me.text VBA callback name dot value equals gv active prompt dot VBA callback name. Okay. Looking good. Save. Cool. So we got, now it's loading basically the data that, it's loading the data from this row. Still think that's kind of big. There. Okay. So let's see, like if we wanted to, this was not here. This VB mode listing was not here where we concluded. We were supposed to run into a problem because we didn't have that. So let's just go ahead and I'm just going to take it off. We're going to run into the problem in a second and you'll see what it is. All right, so we want to save now. So we want to basically hook up this save button. It's not doing anything right now. Yeah, you can still see the holdover from the last on the segment that didn't get published where I was testing out the save method. So let's hook it up. So we have the display elements loading with this refresh display. And then we have this button save. So for the save button, I'm going to make a subroutine called save input values to DB. These are all private. The only one that's public is this real initialize. So like over here on app forms, if you go like form, prompt, explore, hit that dot operator, you're not going to see, you won't see like refresh display elements, or you're only going to see the one that's public. These other things are just things that like forms can do. They have nothing to do with us. But we want to minimize visibility to the outside world. The only thing the outside world is going to see from here is the real initialize. All right, so check this out. ChatGPT, please complete this function by inverting the one above. This is the way to use ChatGPT, in my opinion. See, it's really annoying because I did this. This is like memento. So should I do it again just so you can see? The thing to note is I didn't like type a special prompt like to ChatGPT and then paste it in. You can be messy and dirty and fast. So like I just threw the freaking comment in here. ChatGPT is probably like, what's wrong with you, man? Okay, copy that code. So it's just, the save is just the exact opposite. So here we're taking the value of the text box and we're saying, make the text box equal to the value of the prompt's name. This is a mistake right here. Name. I wonder if ChatGPT did the same thing. Yeah, it did. Name. That's because it was following me, but did it say anything about it, I wonder? However, I noticed that gdActivePrompt.name is being assigned twice. Yes, thank you, ChatGPT. I was just testing you. Okay. Let's test out the save. You can't trick me, my ass. All right, so let's try changing this to BBBB. We hit save. We don't see anything happen though. We don't know if it worked or not. So we can click over to the worksheet and see if it updated, but oh, we can't. So okay, two things that we need to do. One is in the event that it is saving, we need to throw a message box and tell the user that it's saved. And secondly, I'm going to show you. So you see here that like I can't click anything. Like the form is blocking everything. So in the form opener right here, if we throw this, by default the form is opened in what's called VB modal. There's one other kind, VB modeless. If you open the form in VB modeless, you can still like click around. You still have like this freedom to move about. You should prefer to just leave it in the default of the non-modal, just VB modal. Because in reality, this form is like loading and it's saying, the current name of the VBA callback is parrots. It's just not right that if I could like, change it over here to something else, there would be an inconsistency. So just prefer, until you have a reason, leave it as VB modal. Okay, so let's just test this out. New VBA callback, save. I need to hook this up. So see my button save event? I didn't actually call this thing, so let's call it. And while we're here, let's just say value record values updated successfully. VB information for the nice friendly blue message box. And this third argument here is I'm going to set me.caption. That's going to correspond to Prompt Explorer. So let's see. Let's get rid of you parrots, dogs. Me.textName.value. That's got to be my fault, not ChatGPT's. Me.basetext.value active base text. Name, notes, callback, name. It's killing me. You know what we're going to do? No, we're not. These need to be, I'm going to put these in the exact same order. You guys know what being on tilt is in poker? I feel like I'm on tilt because I'm so upset at myself for having to redo this. Base text, name, notes, callback. So it's just the inverse though. So what to see is here we're taking the text box and we're saying set the value equal to gvprompt.basetext. And here we're taking the object up here and we're assigning the value in the text box. So it's just flipping it the other way. That's all it's doing. Save. Dogs. Watch the value here. There we go. All right, cool. So we need to do some other stuff. We can make this a little bit better. And one of them is like, how do you know if there's unsaved changes like that exist? So like if you've changed a value and you're not sure if you've hit save or not. So this is just useful to show you how the just some stuff with forms. So I just double clicked on this and it's gonna give me the default like event that I can hook into. There's a bunch of other ones here. I think that after update is pretty useful, but we're just gonna use change. So whenever this text name thing changes, we're gonna say text name dot back color equals BB yellow. Okay. Oops, what happened? Okay, so when the form loaded, it called real initialize, and real initialize called refresh display elements, and that changed the text box. So in other words, like we hit this change event when the form was loading, and that made it turn yellow. So to prove it, I'll put a little message box here. We'll load the form again. There's that message box. Okay, so we need to deflect that somehow. We don't want to be making this yellow when the form is loading for the very first time. There's a lot of different ways to go about doing that. I talked about two of them before. Now I'm only going to talk about one. All right, I'll just say briefly. The other way to do it, one way to do it is to set a flag up here, like gv initialize is finished as Boolean. By default, a Boolean will start off as false until true. And then right here, you could set this to true. And then in these events, you can just say like, if gv initialize is finished equals false, then exit sub. And I think that would do it. So, but that's not the way we're going to do it because it's not going to be the most instructive right now. In refresh display element, we're going to say dim control as object for each control in me.controls. We're in the user form, so me means the form itself. If we were on class prompt, me would be the prompt. So you'd be like me.name, me.VBA callback. In this case, it's the user form. And we're just going to say control.back color equals BB white. Put a little comment. Start, initialize all controls so they have white background. This is because they momentarily change to yellow during initialization. This makes sure they end up white. you would make that comment a little bit better in production. It was better in the the video you never got to see. Okay, so it worked, but look, like it's a little bit too broad. It got all of these other, it got the labels, it got the buttons, it changed everything to white. That is not what we wanted. So the way we're gonna fix it, we're gonna say if type name control equals text box, then end if. For educational purposes, I'm gonna say debug.print type name control right here. To do, delete this. Debug print. Okay. So let's load the form. First thing to notice is that it worked. No, we only have one of those on there right now. So that works, okay. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, I gotta show you here. So these were the debug prints. So these are the text boxes that we wanted to get. And these are the other, there's labels, command buttons, whatever. Just so you can see what the other controls. They're just the controls that we added. Okay. And now, after we save, so let's go again and let's just look at the save. So like dogs, or here. Let's add the other one. Don't worry, once we get past this section, I won't be able to tilt anymore. All right, let's tidy up. I'm gonna steal the code from the little comment things. We're just like organizing it to help see a little bit. Special events. So we want to do for like all of our text boxes, we just click through them like this. Let's go to VBA callback, notes, base text. These are going to come down here, and these are just going to, they're going to replicate, they're all going to just turn yellow when they change. So text base text dot back color equals BB yellow. Text notes dot back color equals BB yellow, and text VBA callback name dot back color BB yellow. Okay. Save. Just check things out. Okay, good. So looking good. Looking pretty good. Let's hit save. Record values updated. Let's just make sure like BBBBB. This is in the notes field, so that's going to be right there. Save. Cool. Now, after you save, you would expect the yellow to go away, right? So we can achieve that really easily by just, so when we load the form, we call the refresh display elements. That sets the values, immediately makes them back to white. We can just do that. We can just call that refresh display again, right there. Throw an initialize thing up here. But save. I'm just reorganizing, so like these like built in, all these init things are here. These would be like our, I don't know, main scripts. I just like to sort of feel like a functional group, so the code is like organized. It's easier for me to reason and think about it. So these are the button events. Exit button is always kind of special. You'll see in a little while why that's the case. All right, let's see if the yellow goes away when we save now. Yeah, the yellow goes away. All right, those are not good values, so let's just get rid of those. Everything else is looking pretty good. All right. I'm just looking at my notes real quick. All right. Let's delete the old things. We have these old constants. We now have like a really good prompt record here, and we want to basically get rid of this old system that we have. So we want to keep most of our code the same, but we just want to slip into the in the new system. So we'll just follow the error. So let's go to the constants module, and let's just delete these, or we'll comment them for a moment. That's going to cause a compile error, and we're just going to chase the compile error down. So generate prompt expense classified selects. Here we can say, let's do this. So this is the old way. This is our old thing where we basically generate the prompt, we message ChatGPT, and then we take ChatGPT's response. It's a JSON, and we convert it into a dictionary, and then we pass this, both the user selection and the response dictionary, we pass that to paste answers adjacent right. And it uses these two things together to basically take the chatbot's answer and drop it in whatever cells are adjacent. Maybe clear some of these out. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say dim base text as string, dim prompt as class prompt, set prompt equal to get prompt by name. All right. And then here, we're going to parameterize, I never know how to say that word, base text as string. We're going to pass it in the base text. Instead of having it get the base text, we'll pass it in the base text, and then this guy's only job is to go get the choice, this text, and this text, and make this text for us. It's going to be making this latter text here. It's going to use the selection. So we're basically dumbing this function down. It's not going to be as smart anymore. It's going to have the smarter function is going to be up here. So here we just need to say prompt.base text. Now we still have those compile errors. So let's see where else we have. We'll call this base text. That's fine. Oh, all right. There's only one compile error, so we weren't really referencing those ranges too much. So let's go to app constants. Let's kill these completely, and let's get rid of these ranges. So we've got prompt base, prompt final, and prompt response. We could make this like a little bigger. We'll kill these guys. Yep. And let's just, I guess I'll keep this worksheet around maybe for a little while so we can look at things. We don't really need it though. Okay. I'm going to pause again and be very careful to start correctly the next time. Okay, I'm back. One thing that we forgot to do is this open notepad button. So let me just code that really quickly here. Call open form, no, what is it? Export text file. We give it the text that we want to export. That's going to be me.text base text. A file name, we'll just use activeprompt.name, and this third parameter is open the file. So if it's false, it'll just save it to whatever folder the Excel file, this file we're in now, is in. If it's true, it'll open it. You can also see here that it shows you what it defaults to. So if you don't provide this, an argument for that parameter, it will be assumed to be true. But we'll explicitly pass true. All right, let's test it out. Open Notepad. There it is. Okay. And what it actually did is it saved it right there. Okay. So let's look. We just went and we replaced the old reference to the range name, and we put in the new. We changed the source of the base text to be from the model. So let's make sure that it still works. AI hacking. It does. Okay. That's good. So each time we change something, we should verify that it does in fact work. The next thing is in the original part 1 of this, there was some to-dos that I meant to leave in there for us. Where are they? Add back to-do. Let's see if I can find them here. Here. So because of all the snafus that we were hitting with the selection, we had some to-dos that were supposed to be here that I was like planning to leave the to-dos and then do them in part 2, but we just never put the to-dos in here. So let's put these to-dos in here, pretend that these have been here for a while, and now we're going to attend to them. So what we want to do is, like, if you guys recall, like I would constantly be in the wrong cell with my selection when we were running the sub, or I'd be here and then it would go here. So we want to add a little bit of enforcement to make it so that less likely for that to happen. So right here, when this procedure begins, we want to make sure that at least 2 cells are selected, that only 1 column is selected, that every selected cell is non-blank, and that every cell in the adjacent right column is blank. Just because you don't want to overwrite something. It's just a good sanity check of, like, we don't want VBA to come in if we're in some, here, and then somehow like write into this. So let's do that. So we're gonna write private function return true and warn user if selection range is invalid, or just invalid. And we're gonna take selection column as range. So we could, in theory, we could just reference this selection here, which is just no matter, it's always going to be equal to whatever range is currently selected. But we're going to pass it instead. We're going to actually pass it in. The reason is the same as like down here, how we wanted this function to be dumb. We don't want this like a little helper function, and it doesn't need to. It'll be easier for us to test it later. We can actually test it out. Pass it a bunch of ranges, some that we know are not going to pass the checks, in order to make sure, like quality control, to make sure that it's working as we expect. And we'll do that later, and that'll be part of this test workbook. For now, let's just write it. So we're going to put a owner string. I do this as like so that when I throw the message box, I can make the title of the message box the name of the function. It's just a thing that I do. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. All right, we're going to make a collection called reasons. We'll do the 1-line dim in this case. And let's just stub out our check. So check at least 2 cells are selected. Check only 1 column is selected. Check the selected column is fully populated. How about all selected cells are populated? Check adjacent column is completely blank. Okay, so this is sort of our marching orders. So if selection column dot cells dot count is less than 2, less than 2, then reasons dot add at least 2 cells must be selected. Okay. For this one, if selection column dot columns dot count is not equal to 1, then reasons dot add. We're just adding an item to the collection each of these times. Every selected cell. No. exactly one column must be selected when running this procedure. Okay? All right, how did I do this one? If range count populated cells, so see all these different range methods? These are just things that the add-in has that I just built in because I find them to be useful on a lot of occasions. If range count populated cells selected column is not equal to selection column dot cells dot count, then reasons dot add every selected cell must be populated with an expense description. Okay. And here we're going to need the adjacent column, dim adjacent column as range, set adjacent column equal to selection column. There's this offset. We don't change anything on the row, but we want one there. And then, so if range count populated cells adjacent column is, I think, just greater than, oh, we have another one. If not, range is blank, adjacent column, then reasons dot add the column adjacent right of the current selection must be empty. Avoid accidental overwriting. What do we actually want this? Selection column. So let's change this. Only one spot. Okay. Everything passes. Let's save real quick. In order to test it, what we can do is just like, let's momentarily, just for a brief moment in time, we'll put this in here and say set selection column equal to selection. We're going to pull this back up and make it a parameter. It's just a little bit easier to test it for a hot second. While we're developing it. All right, so now we need to basically reconcile. So if the collection, it's going to start off as empty. Okay, so like, you know, debug.assert reasons.count equals 0. The debug.assert line, if it's not true, it just freezes control. So if I run this now, nothing will happen. But say I put in like 4 here, it's going to freeze there because it is 0. There's nothing in it right now. So these are actually a good way to like sanity check things, is you can put those in while you're developing, just to make sure that the conditions align with your expectations. All right, so let's reconcile. The top part is our checks. If reasons.count equals 0, then problems exist equals false. False. Forgot to put a little variable. Problems exist as Boolean. So we create a variable. It's a true-false variable. And at the very end in this function, we're going to return, no, not true. We'll return problems exist. So basically, if the count, if there's anything but 0 items in here, that means something is wrong. More than one thing could be wrong concurrently. And the way that we're going to use this is up here. We're just going to say if selection column, oh well, I can't put that in yet. This is going to go in here like this. Bypass if selection is not valid. And the nice thing, we're going to warn the user. We'll just handle the warning part down here. This smarter, more intelligent power, it's beneath it to have to provide the explicit warnings. All right. So I can't do, I'll have to comment it for just a second because we don't have the, it's not taking parameter yet. Need to put the return type here. All right, so let's make sure things are okay. Dim. Things are okay now. All right. Dim failure reasons as string. Failure reasons equals collection to numbered list. And the collection is reasons. Something looked weird here. Give me a second to go. This. Okay. And right here, we're going to need to message box it. Message box, failure reasons, VB exclamation. That's the yellow. It's not friendly like the blue, but it's not like red critical end of the world either. And the owner. And then just when I'm debugging, it's nice to see the name of the function that's throwing the message box. And it doesn't really hurt your end users either. All right, let's test it out. So let's first check the valid case. We'll just put our cursor in here. I'm hitting F5, no problems. Now let's do this. So see how this one is populated? That should not be okay. The column adjacent right must be empty. Okay, good, that works. Now let's try getting some empty cells. Every selected cell must be populated, and the column adjacent right, we broke 2 rules in this case. So it's working. That's, I think, probably enough for you to see for now. If we have time, we'll definitely unit test it. I want to unit test that. So now that we're done testing, let's put this back as a parameter again. Let's get rid of these. And let's bring this guy back. Sometimes when it like takes away the, can't see the things when it's in small mode. Okay. And we need one more. So before we go and send the prompt to ChatGPT, we do want to make sure the selection's valid. But then after we get the response back, who knows if ChatGPT went off the rails and it just did something that we don't expect. So we want to actually validate before we call this paste answers, the callback, before we call that function, we want to just take a look at the chatbot's response and make sure that it's reasonable. So we're going to make a function here called return true and warn user if chatbot response is invalid. Give this back a Boolean. We can go full screen here since we don't need to see the cells for this one. All right. This is going to be a really simple one. So chatbot, call this response text. If not is JSON, response text, then this is really actually, it's going to be mirroring very, very closely this other one right here. In structure, the checks it's due are going to be different, but the structure is going to be the same. Check chatbot provided a valid JSON versus hi, how can I assist you today? Okay. Reasons.add. The chatbot response must be a valid. Sure. I was debating whether it should say the chatbot response is not a valid JSON, but I'm going to sort of emulate what we did here. Must be, must be, must be. We'll just stick with that pattern. And then for reconciling the checks, it's exactly the same. Except this guy is going to be this. Okay? So we can just message box. We don't even have to message box it. Let's just call it. If I've message box the result, it'll just say true or false, but we know if there's any sort of problem, this is going to throw its own message box. So let's pass it something that's definitely not a JSON. Cool. And then let's just get a real JSON real quick. Real JSON string. Make sure that that looks good. That's a valid JSON. And done. Good. So it didn't throw a message box. Turn these off. Nothing. So this guy works now. Okay? So right here, chat comp dot latest message. I mean, I guess we could do this like this. That way we only reach into the chat comp to the latest message once. We get it, we copy it to this variable, and then we don't we abandon that guy. Sub bypass if the chatbot response is invalid, not a JSON. Another important thought here is that like we want to have a seam. So like yes, right now it's only checking one thing that it's a JSON, but we've made it very easy to just come in here and add more checks. So when things happen, like we already have that seam carved out, so it's easy for us to extend it when we need to. This would be a good time to save. Let's do one of those F12 saves. We'll increment a number. Okay. Pause for a second. All right, let's keep going. So we can actually see real quick if it ties in. So classify expenses. This is going to make it mark proof, so we won't be able to. No. Didn't make it mark proof. That's why you test it. Look what I forgot. So right here. So you guys see what just happened? Is it actually it ran it. We didn't set the flag true. I think that probably there's a better way to like encapsulate this logic here. And let's move this up. I tend to keep all the validation type stuff at the bottom. I call it the validation caboose. And the smarter stuff, it's progressively more smart, and the public stuff is at the top. So this would also qualify as smarter stuff. Sure, that's fine. Okay. Good. Bad. I mean, if you could also just do like reasons.count not equal to 0. I don't know. There's something about this. I don't really like the way that this is set up, but we're not going to worry about it too much right now. Let's test it again. So again, this time it should deflect. Classify expenses, and it stopped. Good. And we got lucky with the reason it didn't overwrite my thing with categories is because ChatGPT was probably like, you didn't give me any expenses. It was completely blank. Okay, so let's do some really cool stuff now. We need to know about partial functions. So a callback, this is our callback right now. So basically we send the prompt. When the prompt comes back, we do something. We paste the answers adjacent right. With the model-based one, we're going to do something different. We're going to save the chatbot's answers into the model. But we need to basically look at this this concept of partial functions. So where you've seen them before is like here. Here we have, when we click the smiley face button in the right-click menu, this is the callback, classify expense selection. When the shortcuts that we made here to just do like Control-Shift-G and get the same effect, there's the callback. And the other one was in the commands. Here we had command classify selection, and we did it here. I noticed something I did last time too. You know what? We don't even need this. Last time I forgot that like I registered this our new command. But then I like stole. I never actually like I don't know. It's just we don't need this example anymore. Maybe I'll leave it there. Okay, so that's callbacks, and the problem is that we can't like put an argument with it. So if you can imagine a function or one of these objects that we're going to look at right now, let's look at it. Demo partial functions. All right, so we use. Let me see my notes. All right, this was my little example. Message box pilot names. Pilot name as string, copilot name as string. And let me just cheat and steal this thing here. All right, so if we call this function, Bruce Willis is the pilot. Nick Cage is his co-pilot. The co-pilot and pilot and co-pilot are Bruce Willis and Nick Cage, respectively. Okay. That's a direct call. There's another way, though. Uh-oh. My toddler just ran behind me. Let me pause this for a second. Okay, I got rid of that toddler. Set partial equal to create partial function. This workbook, we're going to give it the name of the function to call. So it says proc then args. So the proc is the procedure, and then the args are what we want to pass to it. So this function, it takes two parameters. By the way, the difference between a parameter and an argument, two sides of the same coin. The parameter is like the official, this whole line right here is called the function signature. It's got, you know, the name of it, any parameters that it takes, and if it's a function, it'll have a return type. This is a sub, so it doesn't return anything. An argument is what you pass. So like Bruce Willis is the argument, and he's being passed as the pilot name parameter. Sometimes I think I've been using those interchangeably, and it's not too, in practice, I don't think it's too, the distinction is that people use them both. Kleenex kind of situation. So if we pass, I don't know, let's just use Bruce again. That's one argument, and then the other one is Nick. Okay, and then we call partial dot execute call. We're going to get the exact same effect. But the key thing to think about is that now we can create this, and actually here's the key thing, is that let's say that only Bruce, we've only put one of the arguments on. This will error. It's going to say error 449, argument not optional, and there's a little clue. Can indicate forgetting to pass a required parameter. So it's trying to, help us. But here's the crazy part. So here down here we can say partial dot add arg Bruce. And just so you can see it both ways, this will work like this, or we could say call partial dot add arg Bruce. Maybe we'll leave the call there. No, I'm not going to leave the call. Like I said, sometimes like there's certain places where I just don't want it. Most places I do. Okay, so now it's going to work. But here's the key. So when we're in over here in our classify selection, we have two parameters that we've got to get to this callback. One of them is the selection column. This is already known. This is known before we call the chatbot. We know that information in advance. We can get that loaded in. We're not going to be able to get the second parameter loaded in, the chatbot's response. We're not going to be able to get that in until after it comes back. So, and you'll see, it might seem like, why don't we just call it directly? It will make sense in a moment, I promise. So let's just go ahead and let's do this. I'll show you where the puck is going first. Let's just stash this guy, a copy of him on the side, in case I screw something up. And let's get rid of where we actually where we call the chatbot. Let's get rid of this part too. Let's even get rid of this part. Let's get rid of all of this stuff. And instead, and let's even get rid of this one. Let's instead make VBA partial VBA callback as class partial function, set partial VBA callback equal to create partial function. We're going to give it, we're going to load, where is this stupid guy right here? And we're going to put in the selection column. So we're only putting in the first argument. I don't think we're really going to need this. Really get it down there. We're only putting in this one. We're not putting in this one. And then we're going to call this open form prompt interceptor, this workbook, final prompts, and the execution callback. Okay? This is going to open a form that's inside the add-in. This is a form that when I was making this video, I did not have this planned. The prompt interceptor did not exist. But I realized when I was making it, I was like, it'd be really cool to have something that does exactly what this form is about to do. All right, what did I forget? Create partial function. First parameter is supposed to be the workbook where the function is defined. That would be this workbook. Okay? Let's try it out. Let's save. No compile errors, right? Okay, good. So check this out. AI hacking, classify expenses. Boom. So this is cool because it's actually intercepting the prompt in the middle. We can look at the prompt and see about it. And we can also copy this text. We can go to, my video is kind of going crazy. Yeah. And we can paste the prompt directly to ChatGPT like this. So now we're not incurring any costs. So we can actually play around with the prompt. We can look at it, and then when we want to, we can fork it to we can go back to the other way, the way we were doing it before. So I can take ChatGPT's answer now, like right here. So you can see there's nothing in these cells here, and I can just paste ChatGPT's answer here. I gotta click out of it. It won't let you fire the response until it sees there's something in here. And then we can click to launch the response and check it out. It's gonna ask me, just to be sure, like, we're gonna call this procedure, there's one argument, okay. And then it drops them all in. So now we're not actually, we basically created there's another scene there. So it's a way that we could like work on prompts and just send them to ChatGPT and paste ChatGPT's response without hitting the API. And I don't know, it's free to send it to ChatGPT, but it costs, you know, a fraction of a penny to send it through the API. All right, so let me conclude. Let's do one more thing, and that is we want to build a fork. So we want to have a setting that we can change, and when we change the setting, it'll go one way or another. It'll either do it just right away without opening Prompt Interceptor, or it'll open Prompt Interceptor. So let's see. I just want to see, like, I have a name of the setting. Create setting. There we go. All right. So one of the things that you can do with the add-in is you can create your own settings. So let's make one here. I'm going to click Create Workbook Setting. We're going to give it a name, AI Intercept Outgoing Prompts. Create setting. It just tells you a little bit of stuff that I'm going to tell you anyways. So it added this row here. So put the current value here and any data validation. I'm going to go ahead and just copy. This has true-false validation in it. I'm just going to copy that cell there because it's going to bring the validation with it. Is it a user input? Yes, it is a user input. You can put formulas. You can put other stuff here. It's kind of whatever you want. But the is user input means like it means it'll show it in the form for us. Otherwise, we would just get it with code. It's not deprecated. It's not a formula, and it's not encrypted. For our description text, I have some stuff here. If true, any outbound requests are intercepted. That'll just like show up in the form. And for friendly, we can just call it. Friendly is just like a shorter name that will appear in the settings form. Lastly, these are all in the group Whoa because they came with your workbook. These settings, like the add-in uses them, most of them. But I'm going to make this group called AI, meaning that, and then any settings we have that we put in the AI group, we can basically load a form, and all we have to do is give it the group name AI, and it will display those settings. So let's go to the home sheet, and you can see like the regular workbook settings. You know, these are the ones that ship with the workbook. Notably, the AI one is not in there, okay? So let's go here, developer, design mode, copy that button, properties, make a thing, it's AI settings. We are going to need to, we're gonna need to make a constant. So let's actually go here, constants. Because we don't want to reference these things directly in the code. We want to make a constant and then reference the constant. So these are just going to be settings. I don't know. AI setting. Use interceptor as string equals AI intercept outgoing prompts. And then I want to have one more. Setting group AI. So those are the two things that we did. We made this group and this. So we're hedging the risk that those could change their names in the future. Okay, so let's go back to that worksheet. On home, let's open this button. It's got no code running right now. We're going to call open form Whoa settings. Whoa settings custom. And it's going to want to know the host workbook. That's this workbook. The group filter, which is going to be setting group AI. And the unload callback, you'll see more what that does later, but those are both optional. We don't need those. We only need those two. All right, let's save it. Oops. No settings found. Why not? I wonder. Let's try it again. I think I just needed to hit the recalculate button maybe. I'm not really sure. Let's go to this. All right, it's true right now. It's one of those modal forms, so we're not going to be able to see it, but there, it's false. Let's get these guys kind of out of here too. I don't know what's going on in this worksheet, but we don't need that either. We don't need to see the settings. So we don't normally have the setting registry open. Like I opened it so I could show you under the wires, but we don't need it. And realistically, we don't need these open right now either. Okay. Give this like a nicer, cool little blue color. All right, so now we're going to create a function on app comment. And that function is going to be called public function should use prompt interceptor for. And it's going to return in one line. It's just going to say get setting, get whoa. Get setting value. And this is going to be AI setting should use interceptor. So we can see it's false right now. If we change it to true, run it again, now it's true. And then over here in our function, we can now say if should use prompt interceptor, then go down this route. Otherwise, traditional route. For the traditional route, we're going to create another function here. And instead of keeping all this code inside here, because we know we want to be able to have a lot of prompts, not just one, like right now we only have one prompt that we're working with, but we want to set ourselves up to have as many of them as we want to. So let's look at what I did. Execute this one. Execute prompt with callback VBA. It's going to take final text as string. So you see how this is like a little bit, it's getting a little bit long, especially because it's also going to return one of these chat completion UDTs. We can break it up in multiple lines with this delimiter. It's like an underscore. I realize that this syntax like is not very, it's very weird. I didn't like it at all. For years, I didn't like it. I would just go wide. But I do think it's, I've been avoiding it. I didn't want you guys to be alarmed by it. But it's just the same. You can basically just continue the line. You just put a space and an underscore, and then you can keep going. You get used to it fast, and I would suggest that you, and no programmers, nobody likes it to go wide. Like a lot of people are very strict. They'll only go like 80 characters wide, which is not much at all. I like a longer line limit, like 120 is good for me. But let's go ahead and let's do this. So let's steal this code from up here. Let's uncomment it. Okay. And it's going to return the full chat completion. Here, we're going to say, we're not actually going to do anything with it. We're not actually going to do anything with the chat comp. Oh yeah, let's do it. Chat comp equals final text. It's gonna take the exact same arguments as the prompt interceptor. All right. And right here, we're going to need these guys. One thing here that's important is like, so right now in our little world, the chatbot always returns a dictionary like this. But we want to make this flexible. Like maybe the chatbot is just returning, another prompt we have doesn't need a dictionary back. It just wants a straight collection, a flat list. So instead of saying here dim response dict as dictionary, we're going to say response object. Note, it's a collection or a dictionary. Okay? And Tim Hall's JSON converter it'll just know. This parse JSON, it can return an object, a dictionary or a collection. It just depends on what the JSON is. All right, and so then we're going to need to take the partial VBA callback dot add arg, and we're going to tack on that response object right there. Okay, and then the last thing we need to do is call partial execute call. And that's going to just return. This is just the thing that has the chatbot's message in it, because I don't know, the caller might need it. We'll send it. So attach the argument, chatbot response, parsed into an object, execute the callback, raw response text, in case the caller needs it. All right. All right, this hard-coded paste answers adjacent right, this is no longer going to be, we're not going to use that anymore. Instead, we're going to use prompt.VBA callback name. So create the callback and load the first argument. Then whether it's Prompt Interceptor or whether it's this guy, they are both going to be attaching the second argument for us. That's exactly like what we did here, where we attached Bruce Willis as the pilot. Then separately, wow, Bruce was both. It should have been Nick. And then separately, we attached Nick. So we can do them at different, here we just did them one line after another. That was maybe not the best example. But now it makes a little bit more sense. So fork based on whether to use the prompt interceptor. And then finally, here, let's say if chatcomp dot, whenever you start typing and you type the dot and nothing comes up, it means there's a compiler somewhere. Yeah. Dim chatcomp as if chatcomp dot tokens. Yeah, I think there's like a total tokens. I don't know why. So like basically if we didn't fire the prompt or we sent something blank, like if total tokens was blank, it would mean that something was wrong. But basically if, assuming that it was all good, let's take the prompt and say prompt.full example prompt equals final prompt, and prompt.full example response equals chatcomp.latest message. So basically like anytime we fire the prompt and we get a successful response, we're going to be filling out break into the encapsulation again. We're going to just fill this out with whatever the latest one was, just so we have something in there to see. Update the DB, update the prompt record with the latest chat message. sometimes like a good comment should not just say what the code is doing. That's a bad practice. The most important thing that comment should do is explain why you're doing something. That's much more important than just like restating the paragraph, so to speak. Something I do sometimes is with comments, my own variation is I say what would happen if we didn't do the next line. Like if we commented out the next line, then this would explode over here or whatever. And I have found after reviewing my own code months and months later that technique is paid dividends for me. Honestly, this whole final text, final prompt thing that we keep tangling over ourselves here, we should just change it, final prompt, everywhere. There's only one spot left. Okay. Cool. All right, so now if we set this thing to true, use Prompt Interceptor. Let's test it all the way through. It's gonna work. Oh, look though. I see something we forgot to do. We didn't set the name of the callback function. We didn't put it in there. This paste answers adjacent right. It's not actually saved. So let's just go here to the Prompt Explorer. We'll save that. Prompt Interceptor would have caught that if I had tried to keep going. Try it yourself. Get the add-in. Try it yourself and see. Classify expenses. Yeah, it shows you here. And actually, if you click on this, it will open up the VBA code editor and take you right to the callback function. All right, so fire prompt. Okay, there's the answer. I threw something in here too. If you like double click on it, it'll make it the JSON pretty, which I think was a nice touch, if I may say so. Launch code response. Successfully executed. There it is. Okay, and let's just verify that if we do it the other way with this false, let's verify that it works the old way too. Probably we would remove those message boxes, in the final analysis. I don't know. But it works. Great time to save. Increment our version to 8. And let's do a little bit of house cleaning real quick. So paste answers adjacent right. The module should be focused, right? Every module should be focused on doing something well and not stray too far. So this paste answers adjacent right, this really could go to a lot of prompts might use this. There might be a ton of classification things that use it. So it doesn't really belong here. So we're going to change it to public. Actually, I'll leave it as private for a second, just so you can see something. And we're going to add a new module. And we're going to name that module AI Agent Tools. And we'll do the usual drill. Take that stuff. And then let's take paste answers adjacent right. And let's put it here. Now watch what happens. I see the problem. Well, it's not a problem. Like it's actually everything would work now perfectly fine. But it used to be that we called it directly, paste answers, and we'd get a compile error because it's private. So like on this module here can't see that function. It's not visible. AI agent tools. There's nothing. There's nothing to see. So we have to make it public because we want this module to expose it. So the modules are supposed to be doing one job, and ideally it exposes as few functions as possible. We want to sort of conceal all the stuff like how we generated this prompt, return true, if the selection is invalid. Like this is all stuff that's like, we don't need it outside this module. So you want to sort of optimize or solve for like minimizing the surface that's visible of I keep saying the API. It's probably confusing, right? Because he's talking about the chatbot API, or what does he mean? The API just means like the modules API is like what are its public methods. Maybe I'll try not to use the word that way. I don't know. All right. Another thing that is not is that this is also not. This is a general thing. We're about to use it for the model-based prompt too. So this execute prompt and this check if the chatbot response is invalid, those both don't belong here. This belongs here. Everything else does belong here. So let's make one more module. AI core. Let's take these guys and let's move them here. I already made that public. Good. Steal these guys. Everything compiles. So we just, like the game of Tetris is always ongoing, where we're trying to sort of condense and compress and clarify and nonstop. So we're keeping it tidy. Excuse me. All right. So I had some notes in here about how we could like maybe work on this problem here, but I don't really think that not problem, but like we have this notion of dry. Don't repeat yourself. It means if you see the same block of code, like right here in the selection range being invalid, and also right here, this problems exist, that you should look for a way to abstract it, right? Because then we can just create a little helper function. Both these guys call the helper. It's sort of tightening it up. But you could easily take that too far. There's another competing theorem of like wet, write everything twice. It means like basically just to hesitate a moment before just creating it. We're gonna hesitate, and I don't think it's important for what the real objective of this mission is, to show you like the thinking of the code, how to write the code, how to use the add-in, and spark your imagination, so to speak. Okay, so this is actually a really good spot. We finished everything. We've set up our fork. We've built all our infrastructure. AI core is already wired. Like, we want to move to like make the business expense model now. We want to import the business expenses. And then instead of just pasting the answers, to the right, we're going to parse that response, and we're going to find the business expense record, and we're going to set the cost category. And the other thing we're going to set is a follow-up question. So there is one of these guys over here, needs context, this one. That means that like we don't know. So if the chatbot has like not high confidence, we want it to return needs context, and we want it to provide a follow-up question. And then that's going to flow into like a broader workflow. So that's where the puck is going next. But I think where the puck is going next for me is probably for dinner. But I think it would be nice if for the next one we could just start like exactly on the business expense. So in order to do that, we're going to have to do one more thing. Right now, we have this nice prompt explorer, right? But it's kind of inconvenient that we need to come into it from, like we have to go to the home sheet. I'm constantly like, coming home and going here. And it has tension, so I'm just hitting Control-Shift-M, which is the same as just clicking this. And if you hover on this, it tells you Control-Shift-M. If I click this, I'm still going to this old, like, the Beethoven place. This is just a generic, view for editing. And it would be much, much better if, like, when you came from the generic list view, if you could go to the Prompt Explorer instead. So let's just do that really quickly. I'm going to go to this class module. Sorry about these things. Spaces. These are all the fields. So you know about functions and subroutines so far. There's also this get and this let, and we'll look at what those are in a minute, but they're just two sides of the same coin. I'll show it to you. Now is not the right time. So we're gonna put these are the fields. Let's see, I'll give you from the top. This is like the sort of infrastructure, that code that exists, which you can use. Some of these will probably go away. You could probably guess what 2JSON does at this point. And then these are your actual fields, the getters. So this is corresponding with exactly what you see here. Okay, every field has both a getter and a setter. And then these are sort of like special functions that that you can choose to use or not use. There's one that's not on here, and I'm going to just paste it right here. And it probably will be on there when I put the add-in, when I release the version 1, but it for reasons I don't want to explain, it's not on there right now. There's a really great documentation page that like you can just click and look up all these function names. So let's see. I'll show you like the step-by-step. So we're just going to throw a message box here. It says hitting the list view double click. All right. So when we put this function here, we're going to intercept it. So when we're in the list view and when we double click on the prompt, it's going to check, hey, does that particular model, the class, does it have this custom callback edit form thing in there? And if it does, it's going to call that. So if I double click this, there's our message box. And notice it's not opening up the edit view. So it forks. So all we got to do, and it's also giving us this callback, which you now know, this is a partial function. You now know, a little bit about what those do. So the form, this is the list view form. It's passing itself, the form that we were in. So we double clicked on a row. The form found the right prompt record, and it's calling this method, this sub on the prompt. It's passing itself, and it's passing an unload callback. So we're going to just open up the prompt explorer, and we know the two parameters it takes. We made this function. It's a prompt name, and let's go ahead and add this right now. I didn't want you to, I just feel like it was like overwhelm you if I did this earlier. Okay, and then we're going to pass this unload callback forward. Optional unload callback as class virtual function. Swear to God, in 2 seconds this is going to make sense. Why the callback's in there. GV unload callback. All right, another one of these module variables. So real initialize. Now we're firing up. We're caching two things up there that are just going to stay there the whole time that the form is open. The unload callback. Down here in our exit method, form unload, dynamic redirect. The form is me, and we're going to give it that unload callback. So see the second, it wants two things. It wants the open form and the unload callback. Okay. Why did we do this? This guy. I think I'm gonna get it on the first time. I don't know. The reason is, so now we double click, we're gonna get, cool, we got this, we got it to work, nice. And check this out, when we hit exit, it takes us back to where we came from. So that is the purpose of the unload callback, is there are sometimes look, if we come into that form, Prompt Explorer, if we come in from here, unload callback's going to be nothing. Like, because the worksheet button, it doesn't even pass the prompt name. Remember, it passes nothing. The default prompt name gets assigned to the selection one. And it didn't pass an unload callback. That's fine though. So we exit. There's no unload callback. It just goes back to the worksheet screen. But if we do provide an unload callback, then like it'll take us back to where we came from. So that's how like all of these forms, all my exit buttons, every real initialize, they're all the same. I always just do the unload callback, that pattern. And honestly, I just copy paste it. I don't think about it too much. So here in the model view, if we like inspect the fields for prompt, see how we're in the fields inspector. If I hit exit, we're back at the model view. But if I come in from the shortcut, Control-Shift-K, and I exit, we're not. It's the same pattern. It's just that callback thing. So, nice, dude. I want to see like the little notes here. Mark's notes. So we just freaking like finished it, and now we're ready to do this. Oops. See like the competing AI, because ChatGPT was down earlier, I thought we were gonna have to fall back and use cloud, but ChatGPT got its stuff back together again. Okay, that's it. I am going to go eat dinner. Good night and thank you.